Hello, my name is Abigail, and I've researched how prevalent are third parties in American politics. In his final address to the American people, first President George Washington had concluded that any political party posed a serious threat to the unity of the young nation. He believed that the emergence of political parties would target regional political ideology and cause division between the North, South, and the West. Now, how similar does this sound? Americans even now are seeing the political ramifications of the two-party system. However, the American two-party system is not set in stone. There are third parties that exist to represent the Americans that either cannot or choose not to vote under the political dichotomy. The legacy of third parties in America is a long tradition, with the first third party forming all the way back in 1832. In the face of 187 years of political competition, there's an explanation missing as to why none of the current third parties have gained any presidential candidate, any Supreme Court appointments, or a significant number of Senate seats. As the system works now, it's too difficult for a small party to enter the political races due to an arrangement of political favors and because of deliberate actions on the part of the Democratic and Republican parties. All American political representatives work within a system of political favors. The system is also predictable, as authors Michael Laver and Ken Benoit found out in 2003. Laver and Benoit's research shows that there is a concrete system of favors where at critical election times, large parties would give political appointments, payoffs, and legislature influence to politicians that change their registration to a new party. There exists an active incentive to become part of the two-party system as a politician, and this reduces the effectiveness of third parties at the internal level of politics. In addition to the favor system, the Democratic and Republican parties take active action against the success of third parties. Author Daniel Lee researched this interaction in a study he conducted in 2011. Third parties exist to represent a single issue or a small set of interrelated issues, and by design, they have a targeted voting base. The Democratic and Republican parties do not have this issue, and through Lee's study of the 1996 congressional election, he was able to show that they are flexible enough to change their platforms to overcome third-party competition. The American political system is designed to reject third parties, but the emergence of third parties has been happening from 1832 to most recently in the late 1990s. The constant presence of third parties and the consistent 3 to 5% of third-party congressional seats in 2000 does not seem to fit within this model of the American two-party system. There must be another factor contributing to the failure of third parties, since the majority of research done to this point has been on the logistical process and the internal process of the political system itself. The answer may lie in the social facet of American politics. Conclusions can be drawn to answer the question, to what extent are third parties popular in American opinion, and what does this opinion mean for the future success of third parties in American politics? To build a successful questionnaire, the online application Google Forms was utilized for question writing and survey dispersal. The questionnaire comprised of 9 questions total. I chose to distribute this form online to 2 groups. The first group was to a group of my Oakland University classmates. I then sent the survey for completion out to a random age group of people via my personal Facebook page. The survey itself was built to be completely anonymous since the participants are self-reporting sensitive information. The first 2 questions of the survey were diagnostic. They asked the participants' age and sex. These were optional for the participant if they felt like it would compromise their anonymity or if they just preferred not to answer. Question 3 is also diagnostic, but is relevant to the research. This question gathers from which news outlet source participants get their political news. The next 2 questions, questions 4 and 5, gather their status as a voter or non-voter and when they last voted. Questions 6 and 7 collect data from which political parties the participants have voted for previously and any third parties the participants may have heard of before. Question 8 is a multiple-choice question simply asking if the participant believes that third parties would represent their political views better, while question 9 asks the participant to explain their reasoning behind their answer to question 8. By distributing this questionnaire online, I reached an audience of 31 people. The majority of those 31 participants fell under the 18 to 25-year-old age group. This group holds 77.3% of my total data. 1/3 of my participants were not of voting age, which had slightly negative consequences for my data. I can draw no conclusions from their prior voting behavior, and because they can't vote, this age group may have been less knowledgeable about political parties in general, especially third parties. Unsurprisingly, in this digital age, internet sources were the most popular source of political news, with 64.5% of participants watching internet news. Just less than 1/3, 32.3% of participants watched cable news sources instead. The personal opinion on third parties was nearly split between believing third parties are beneficial and being unsure as to the benefits. Most participants did not know more than 2 American third parties. Those that did, only 7 people out of 31, were more positive about the future success of third parties than the larger, uneducated group of participants. What the data from the cable and internet news watchers shows is that the media coverage is relatively uniform across platforms. There are almost twice as many internet news users than cable news, but the opinion on the future success of third parties is even for both groups. What this also indicates is that the media coverage of third parties is poor. When less than 25% of news watchers are uneducated on the benefits or drawbacks of third parties, one can see an obvious need for better media representation. The news source they use for their political news had no correlation with how educated they are, as the distribution was nearly 50-50 for both groups. This primary research serves as an alternate explanation to previous research. The previous research all shows the necessity of internal system change for third parties to be able to get onto election ballots and into election debates. Now knowing that less than 25% of voters are educated on the existence and benefits of third parties shows that the barriers for third parties are actively hindering their possibility of success. Like with any other study, I ran into some limitations. The survey itself was only sent to existing contacts of mine. I sent it out to classmates of mine from 2 classes, this Writing 160 class, and one of my high-level archaeology classes. It was also shared via a URL link to my personal Facebook page. I received a total of 31 responses, which is a small sample size when you're trying to talk about national-level politics. Due to the nature of the survey being online only, the explanations in the open-ended questions could have been misinterpreted from either end. The participant may not have known how to answer the question, especially some of the participants from the uneducated group, but also I could have been misinterpreting their answers due to the fact that they didn't fill the survey out in front of me. What this research is showing at its most basic level is the need for improved media coverage of third parties and third-party candidates during and outside of election times. The level of knowledge of third parties was even across news outlet sources and was low in all categories. Less than 25% of surveyed voters were knowledgeable about the existence and benefits of third parties. Stronger media representation, both online and in cable news sources, will contribute the most to raising knowledge and support for American third parties.